Let's bring in Hussam Zomlot now. He's head of the Palestinian mission to the UK. Welcome to the program. First and foremost, do you condemn what Hamas did inside Israel to Israeli civilians? There are dead and there are hostages.
First and foremost, the Western media must really abandon this framework that has gotten us to where we are today.
Okay, but I just want to know, do you support the killing of civilians?
Of course not, of course not, of course not.
So do you condemn that?
The loss of civilian life is tragic in all sides. And what is happening is extremely worrying and very tragic. As we speak, the loss of lives, you've counted 70 Israeli deaths. There is more than 200 Palestinian deaths so far, more than 1,600. Entire residential compounds are being wiped out. This is a war crime committed by Israel. What is more tragic, or equally tragic, is the blindness and the deafness of the world and the international community for so many years, of the warnings we have been saying that this was coming. Israel knew that this was coming their way. We, the National Movement of Palestine, the PLO, have found a different path 30 years ago. We have committed to what the world asks us. Recognize Israel, commit to negotiations and non-violence, and to international legitimacy and resolution. Israel was expected to do one thing only: roll back its occupation, stop its colonial settlement expansion. Not one day it did so, killing the prospects of a two-state solution. And the world was expected to do one thing, Christian: uphold international law equally on everybody, on Ukraine, on Palestine. And the world fails to do that.
So now
no accountability. Now, every single political avenue is blocked. Every single legal avenue for us is blocked, like the ICJ, the International Court of Justice. You've heard what the US said, or the UK said.
I want to know what happens now. What happens now?
There's
a war that Israel has declared after Palestinian militants, who I don't think you're friends. Hamas is not a supporter of the Palestinian Authority. There's a war. And as you say, there's going to be a massive escalation.
There is a war. You see, we're having this conversation because Israelis have seen what they have seen today. But my people see this every day. Every single day. Palestinians are targeted, killed, arrested, surrounded, their land is confiscated, their holy places are desecrated. Not only Muslims, but Christians. You have been following what is happening in the Al-Aqsa Mosque and in our Christian churches, the spitting on Christian worshippers. Our people have been seeing apartheid being enforced on them over the last years, and the land is being taken, and the hope for a political solution that will fulfill their rights dissipating. And therefore, this is what we need to discuss.
Fine. Yeah, I know. But I mean, as you know, neither the Israeli political spectrum nor the United States nor anybody, it's like the Palestinian issue doesn't exist anymore. The two-state solution the diplomacy is on deep freeze. Can I first ask you, though, before we get to there, what triggered this attack? It's on a certain date, it's 50 years to the date just about. Before, 50 years ago it was October 6th, Yom Kippur. Syria launched a surprise attack on Israel. What do you think triggered this? And it was a very sophisticated Hamas attack.
I don't know. I really, really don't know. What I know is that it was a matter of when, not if. We've been shouting every day, don't leave a vacuum. Don't unheed what we are saying. Pay attention. Don't underestimate people's desire for freedom, for ending the bondage and captivity. Pay attention to the destruction that Israel is doing. Make sure that these supremacists in the Israeli government are not going to turn the whole thing upside down. And therefore, this is not about timing and all that. This is about the fact that we discuss everything except the core thing, the fundamental issue, the root causes. And we've been doing this for 75 years. One sentence. You know that 70% of the population in Gaza, the Palestinians, are refugees since the Nakba of 1948. You know that they have been under besiegement since 2007, the biggest open-air prison. This is what leads to events that you want to discuss.
So here's the thing. Obviously, the Israelis will say this is what happens when we evacuate, for instance, withdraw from Gaza, which they have done. And as you're right, it is sealed and it is a very heavily guarded situation. But what now happens? So, for instance, I was speaking to the former Israeli ambassador to the US, Michael Oren, and he said, even you Palestinian Authority, all of you guys who are in the West Bank, you're under threat from Hamas, and that you're only, he said, Mustafa and Mahmoud Abbas are only alive because Israel keeps them alive, that you're under such threat from your own people. What would you answer to that?
Nonsense. Absolutely nonsense. And Israeli lies all the time. What our people in Gaza are subjected to are the same in the West Bank, in Jerusalem, and our refugees and diaspora. We are united by our suffering, and we are united by our goal, which is ending this occupation, ending this illegality. We have our political differences, of course, but we make no mistake that the one thing that we need to rid ourselves with is the Israeli military occupation, is the colonization, is the system of racial domination that has been imposed on us. We make no mistake of that. So this is not a Palestinian internal affair. This is the failure of every international actor to pay attention, of every international actor. You see, instead of learning the lessons, what I heard today from many international actors, including from the US and the UK, is doubling down on the very same mistakes and failure.
What is the option
that has led us to where we are?
What is the option right now? What happens? Israel doesn't respond to Hamas?
The alternative is statesmanship, is courage, the equal application of international law. We are not lesser of human beings. We are equal as all nations. It's been 75 years of oppression, of wholesale destruction. You've seen what happens in Gaza. Wait until tomorrow and see the thousands who will lose their lives and their livelihoods. Enough is enough. The only solution is respect people's legitimate birthright of self-determination, the right to return to their properties, the right to establish a state of their own, and stop dodging this. Stop finding, detours around it. There is no such a thing as detour. Peace can only be struck with us, the Palestinians, not with anyone else. Because Israel is in odds with us, because Israel has taken our land, because Israel is subjecting us and oppressing us, not anybody else. And bravery from the international community requires the equal application of international law. Israel, as an occupying power, has a full responsibility to protect the civilians under its own occupation, right? This is international law. Israel has the full responsibility to make sure no civilian is harmed. It's been doing the opposite for 75 years. You've just shown on your own program.
Do you worry that statement that you're making is completely compromised when Palestinian militants, terrorists, bomb Israeli civilians, kill them, capture them, hold them hostage?
No.
How do you keep the moral high ground in that case?
We keep the moral high ground by sticking to international law, by reverting to international judicial system, by seeking the ruling of the International Criminal Court. Let international judges come to Palestine, the occupied Palestinian territory, and rule, and we will accept the ruling. If we commit any mistakes or crimes, we will accept it. But everybody knows it's Israel that has been violating every provision of international law and our common human decency.
Do you see, final question, is there any mediator, the US or anybody right now, who could de-escalate this?
The US is completely disqualified. And I've been following what is coming from Washington. Washington considers Israel to be a domestic issue, not a foreign policy issue. And Washington is playing political footballing with this. And regrettably, we have been at the receiving end. The solution is the world, the international community. The US should be on the table, but so is Europe, so is the rest of the world, so is China. The world must come together to end this conflict, as it did with all other conflicts. We are not an exception.
Hussam Zomrat, the head of the Palestinian mission here, thank you for that perspective.